In the early 1980s, the Green River in Washington state became more than just a quiet waterway. It became a dumping ground. Women began vanishing, one after another. Their bodies surfaced days, sometimes weeks later, always near the river's edge. And for nearly 2 decades, the man responsible blended in among the community, washing his truck, going to work, smiling at neighbors. No one suspected the quiet, unremarkable man was a monster. This is the story of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, America's most prolific serial killer. The year was 1982. In the working-class suburbs around Seattle, fear was creeping in. Women were disappearing without a trace. They weren't wealthy. They weren't famous. They were sex workers, young runaways. Women's society often ignored, but their lives ended the same way, strangled, their bodies dumped in the woods or near the cold currents of the Green River. Police first discovered the link when multiple bodies surfaced within months of each other. The pattern was chilling, but the killer, invisible. Investigators had little to go on.
My name's Mark Williams-Thomas, and I'm a former police detective. So once you've identified a potential suspect or suspects, your then position is to try and find evidence in relation to them. And that will be collecting any of the forensic elements around, but also CCTV, external factors. The victim will give you their victimology, will understand why they are a victim. You'll want to know what that person does.
Yet the killer was escalating. By late 1983, the confirmed victims had grown to over 30. The press named him the Green River Killer. And for detectives, the case felt hopeless. They were chasing a ghost. But behind the headlines was a man named Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway was ordinary. Too ordinary. A man who blended into the background. Born in 1949, Ridgway grew up in a troubled home. His father worked at a local mortuary, often speaking casually about death over dinner. His mother, controlling, emotionally volatile. Ridgway later admitted to harboring disturbing thoughts about her from an early age. But outwardly, he lived a normal life. In the 1980s, while police searched desperately for the Green River Killer, Ridgway was clocking into work at a local truck factory. He was married more than once. He attended church. He even volunteered. To everyone around him, he was just Gary.
They use cognitive distortion constantly because in order for them to commit that next murder, they have to justify it in their head that they're not going to get caught. Evidence is key for me because every single killer has to some degree some narcissism in them. There are lots of people who live amongst us every day who have the signs that we've associated with serial killers: psychopathy, narcissism. That's part of some people's makeup every day, and it doesn't make them killers.
Behind that mask, Ridgway was methodical. He targeted women he believed no one would miss, picked them up in his truck, strangled them, often during intercourse. He admitted to necrophilia without hesitation. In his mind, dead women couldn't reject him. Each new kill made him feel stronger, more invisible. And each time police pulled another body from the Green River, Ridgway was already choosing his next victim. For years, the bodies kept appearing. In the dense woods of King County, police stumbled upon bones scattered like discarded trash, skeletons left half-buried in shallow graves. Most were women, many young, many vulnerable, runaways, sex workers. Each discovery told the same story: strangulation, abandonment, and silence. Detectives were overwhelmed. They created the Green River Task Force. Hundreds of officers, tens of thousands of hours, dead ends. One by one, potential suspects were interviewed. Leads dried up, hope faded. In 1983, with public panic rising, police turned to a controversial tool: psychological profiling. A young FBI profiler, John E. Douglas, was brought in. His advice: You're looking for someone who blends in, a man who seems ordinary, who works a simple job, who preys on the invisible. Douglas's profile eerily described Gary Ridgway. At the time, he was already on their suspect list. Ridgway, a truck painter, married, quiet, but he'd been seen with several of the victims before they vanished. He even passed a polygraph. So, police let him go, and Ridgway kept killing. For nearly 2 more decades. By the mid-1990s, the Green River Task Force was nearly disbanded. Decades of failure had taken their toll. The public had moved on. But the bodies never stopped. Gary Ridgway, unnoticed, unbothered. Then, in 2001, technology caught up with him. DNA, evidence collected back in the early 80s, semen from victims' bodies, carefully preserved, was retested using advanced forensic techniques. A match. Gary Ridgway. He was arrested in November 2001. And as detectives questioned him, they uncovered something darker than they had ever imagined. Ridgway didn't just admit to the murders, he described them, calmly, matter-of-factly, in chilling detail. He explained how he chose women who wouldn't be missed, how he'd lure them with money, how he strangled them, often within minutes of picking them up, and how he would return to the bodies, to violate them, over and over. Ridgway showed no remorse. In fact, he seemed confused as to why the detectives cared. In total, he confessed to killing at least 71 women. He said he lost count. Gary Ridgway became the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. In court, the families of the victims sat in silence as Ridgway pled guilty to 48 counts of murder. But he wasn't emotional. The only time he cried was when he spoke about his dog. Gary Ridgway was sentenced to life in prison without parole. But that wasn't justice. Not really. Most of his victims never saw their names in headlines. Many are still unidentified. Just bones. Just case numbers. Ridgway himself admitted, "I picked prostitutes because I thought I could kill as many of them as I wanted without getting caught." He was right. For nearly 20 years, he haunted Washington state, blending in, hunting unnoticed. His case exposed failures. Failures in how police viewed missing women. Failures in communication between departments. Failures that let a man like Gary Ridgway vanish in plain sight. Today, Ridgway sits in solitary confinement, aging, forgotten. But his story remains a brutal reminder. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a quiet man working in a truck factory. His known victim count, 49. His real total, unknown. And in the cold forests near the Green River, pieces of his story may still be buried, waiting. Why did it take so long? How did Gary Ridgway kill for 2 decades, unnoticed? Experts say it was simple. He didn't fit the story people wanted to believe. He wasn't chaotic like Ted Bundy. He wasn't twisted like Jeffrey Dahmer. Ridgway was organized, patient, controlled. He had a family, a stable job, neighbors who trusted him. And that's exactly why he succeeded. His victims, women society ignored, became invisible. And so did he. Ridgway taught us that serial killers don't always hide in shadows. Sometimes they smile in broad daylight, and no one looks twice.